Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. One of the more questionable elements of Alien Covenant was, of course, the Chestburster, which wasn't really a chestburster, it was a mini alien. It was quite odd, actually. Well, now, thanks to the designer of that creature, we've got a peek behind the curtain. Dominic Hailstone has come out and actually revealed that he butted heads with the studio and Ridley Scott. And I say butted heads. There was just, he wanted to do it one way, they wanted to do it another. They obviously ultimately won. But sort of a peek behind the curtain on what could have been and some of the design process. So this popped up on my Twitter yesterday. And I just thought, what a fascinating thing to cover and take a look at, since we're now getting, obviously, a resurgence of the Alien franchise. And presumably, he's now able to talk about this, because I would imagine it's like a 5-year NDA sort of contract type deal, which, you know, makes sense and it's topical given what has now happened. The franchise being sort of reborn again, as it were. So I thought we'd take a look. So dive in with me now and, hit subscribe if this is kind of your jam as we go through this. So like I said, this popped up on my Twitter. And it's not just this. He designed this. But you'll also see in the replies that he showed us a different version of this, or at least close to, as well. So it says Alien Covenant Chestburster. A tricky one, because Ridley essentially, that's Ridley Scott, wanted the thinnest possible sculpt. Alright. So this is a clay sculpt. He built this. Ultimately it was scanned and then put into CG, but it was actually something which was sculpted out of clay. Presumably clay anyway. So yeah, it was Ridley's choice that he wanted it to be incredibly thin. So the only direction was it was to be like a formless human Giacometti, and I don't know what that is, and as smooth as possible. Something I resisted, which I agree with. I mean, why does this need to be as smooth as possible? What a bizarre thing to go down. It is odd, isn't it? Odd choice. So personally, I would have stuck much closer to the original Chestburster. My idea, which was nixed, was that the long head is originally attached to its back. So the thing had more of a mass to use as a battering ram to break its way out. So not only, it uses its jaws to bite its way out, but obviously needs to sort of hit its way out as well, which I think is it's a fascinating design choice. I like that idea a lot. So the head would then separate into something closer to what we see here. Quite pleased with the sculpting on this. Almost no clay on the armature, but the design still bothers me. So he's not being, massively... He's not being horrendous about it. He's just like, I'm not a fan of the design. And I'm not a fan of the design. I don't think many people are a fan of this design. I think it's pretty lame. But it was always intentional, apparently. It was always that way. They always wanted it to be like a formless human. Very bizarre choice. So in the replies was some very interesting information, which I obviously took a look at last night whilst I was chilling out. It says, I do wish you got to have your way. It coming out like a fully formed tiny little man had me laughing in the theatre. Your idea would have certainly been less comedic. My idea didn't even get a look in. It was all about having a more human-looking alien, as it had to mimic him. I can't remember if that part made it into the film, though. I mean, it did. It absolutely did. But they could have had that with your design. All it would take is an awesome moment where you see the Chestburster split apart to become more humanoid. If they could still have had it mimicking, plus the bonus kudos of an excellent bit of lore expansion. Completely. But you know how it is. I say X, someone says nah, and we move on. I'll see if I can find the picture with the frenulum. I'm pretty sure Giga put it in his will that any design submitted to any film, even tangentially related to the Alien franchise, that included the word frenulum had to be included. Obviously a bit of a fun element there. But then he does show us this. You can kind of see it, right? This is another one somewhere where it went further down the back. Never got beyond this level of blocking, though. I liked how weird it looked. I agree. I agree. And you can actually see the neomorph in the background there. Looks awesome, but its proportions bothered me too. It could as well be 8 feet tall. I would have expected the hands, feet and head to be bigger and less defined, like embryos. Still an amazing thing to watch in the movie. Yeah, I like the one in the first film. There's a lot of leeway between that design and the big chap, but no one wants to go there. This is true. Would you be able to show any of the fused head iterations? And obviously we've shown some of that. What is the reason for the elongated head? It never made sense to me, especially not for an advanced killing machine. To get you horny. Great reply. Genuinely great reply. Was this version that was used? I haven't seen Covenant since its theatre release, but I love this glimpse into the design process. Your idea about the head is so biological, it's so fun. This was scanned and adapted by the CG department. They kept most of it. They did a good job. Really wish they could have let you make it more larval, embryotic looking. I understand using the Slenderman silhouette for extra creep factor, but its proportions just didn't work as a chestburster. Fantastic sculpt. Shame that they wouldn't let you have a say in the design. I was actually redoing another sculpt which was too cartoony. I had a say, just not much of one. It was late in the day, so not the time to push out new ideas, as we all knew they were replacing them with CG anyway. What a shame. What a shame. May I ask how big this sculpture is? Apparently about 16 inches, so quite large to be honest. And there's not an awful lot sort of around there now in terms of the replies and things like that. But I did think this was interesting, and I thought this was one of those kind of peek behind the curtains. You know, he didn't really get a look in. Ultimately, Ridley Scott's idea was always to have this formless human. It's a very bizarre design choice to go with, but it is fascinating. Fascinating that was always the intention of Ridley Scott. Quite literally, as he said. You know, Ridley essentially wanted the thinnest possible sculpt. The only direction was it was to be a formless human. As smooth as possible. And so we ended up with this. What a shame. I think ultimately what could have been actually would have been a bit better. Even with the sort of head attached to the back, I think would have been a better design choice. Just because it makes a bit more sense, doesn't it? Having this sort of fully formed little being pop out and be like, oh, here's my arms. Like, it's a bit like, what? You know, and it goes against the lore overall. At least having it closer to the chestburster design would have made more sense, because then it's a version of a chestburster. This was never a chestburster. This was always a tiny little xenomorph. Like, it was just bizarre. Very, very bizarre. But there you go. Fascinating things. Genuinely fascinating stuff. If I could speak to this chap, I think I'd have a great conversation about the sort of design language that they were going for overall. But interesting things. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop them down below. And actually, you know what? In this, you can actually see shades of what they threw at the end of Alien Romulus. Can't you? It's very similar. Very, very similar, actually. So I would say maybe that was Ridley Scott's influence. Maybe. Who knows? But let me know what you think down below. Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye now.